Hey there, everybody. Hope y'all are enjoying your Thursday evening. It's me, Chris Hyde, Camp Master Chris Hyde from Lumber Society. Hope y'all are all having a great week. We are getting started at Natureversity with summer camps. This is our first week of summer camp, so I'm just now getting back into work mode, and I'm feeling good about it. We've had a great week so far, a lot of amazing kids, and we're looking forward to 7 more weeks of camp. And tonight we are coming at you live doing knife carving. So if you are here, if you are with us, hopefully you have some type of cutting tool and hopefully you have some type of stick. Okay. We did drop off sticks at Lumber Society, and if you're watching this after the live stream, no worries. Hopefully you've been aware that you need a stick and a knife to do a knife carving class. But we're going to begin by just giving a shout out to everybody at Buzzmill and letting you all know that they are still open. You can still stop by, you can still order to go, and definitely be sure and check out over off Riverside. Everything's going on over there, buzzmillcoffee.com. Just wanted to update everybody on everything over there. Hopefully we'll be able to do some small, low-key, in-person meetups. I'm not sure when, but we're discussing that, so I just want y'all to be aware. And a couple of other things is just be on the lookout for any kind of emails coming at you. We've got a lot of things happening. Now, tonight, I just want to make sure that everybody is safe, so before we even get started, make sure you've got some kind of cloth or Band-Aid, paper towels, tape, bandana, duct tape, right? Something nearby to keep your hands together in case the knife slips or you accidentally cut yourself. I hope the rules and all the things that I give you all and the agreements, I would like to call them, are preventing you from doing such, but just in case, do have some kind of, medical stuff nearby. First thing we're going to talk about is why knives, right? The big question is why knives? Well, knives are in my opinion, the access point to all other areas of survival, right? So with this tool, it saves me time to create all different types of stuff. Because if I didn't have a knife, I would be having to use some other type of cutting tool. Now, I don't know if you know, but other types of cutting tools could be used as rocks, bone, wood. There's going to be a lot of different types of cutting tools, but nothing will cut like metal, okay? Rocks don't really slice like metal. Rocks more scrape and kind of file away wood more than slices away wood. And so again, it's your access point to all your other tools. Now, when it comes to types of knives, there's a lot of different types, and there's so many people out there who will tell you so many different things about this is the best knife and this is the best knife. It really is just what is best for you. It's just like when we talked about your survival kits. You don't want to go out and just get anything that anybody's selling, because it needs to be kind of designed for you. There are so many types of knives, and I have just a plethora of knives that I brought up here. But you can see, I'm just going to pull a few out. These are, first of all, when you're going for most effective and least costly, these are going to be your best bang for your buck, in my opinion. These are the Mora fixed blade companion knives. Okay, Mora fixed blade companion. And this one is a carbon knife, and we'll talk a little bit about carbon versus stainless in just a second. But this is a Mora fixed blade companion knife. It's a sheath, okay? This is a Mora Eldris, and it's a little mini knife. This is probably the knife, if you've ever watched me live at Lumber Society, this is the knife that's always around my neck, right? This is the knife, everywhere I go, it's around my neck. It's a real small little knife. It doesn't split wood and do a whole lot of big stuff, but you can get by with this knife if you really had to. In a 3-day survival situation, you could definitely get by with this knife. A little bit longer than that situation, I would be upping my game, something more like this, okay? Notice how thick the blades are. That definitely has some features to it, obviously, right? Some integrity more, so you could really beat on this thing, okay? And this is a LT Wright knife, by the way. Shout out to LT Wright. They make some amazing knives. And shout out to my friend Leo, Border Patrol agent. He's a great friend of mine. He's taken a lot of classes of mine, and he bought this knife and did not like the thickness of the handle. And that is a very thick handle to me too, and it has a pretty big grip. Okay, but one of the things I want you to notice about these two knives, the reason I'm holding these particular two knives up is because of something called Tang. Okay, look at this knife. You see the blade here, it goes all the way through the handle. This is what's known as a full Tang knife. You always want a full Tang knife, in my opinion. The reason why is because when you start beating on the back of this sucker and it's splitting wood, you're not running any risk of shattering the actual knife. Now, if you were to begin bashing on this thing, right, this is not a full Tang knife. This has a little taper of a piece of metal that just goes into the handle about right here. So if you were to bash on this knife for long enough, you would eventually break it, okay? But again, what's best for you? Maybe you don't need a full Tang knife. Maybe you're not in a, maybe you carry a hatchet and a saw with you in your pack, and therefore you're not going to be beating on your knife as much. So those are the kinds of things that you think about when choosing a knife for purchase, right? So let's talk real quick about metal types now. Metal types come in two, for knives, the two types really, in my opinion, is carbon and stainless steel. Carbon, the reason you're wanting a carbon blade is it will hold an edge a lot longer, so much longer than a stainless steel. However, there's a drawback to that. That means it's so much harder to sharpen, okay? You really need to work diligently to get this thing to peak efficiency, okay? Whereas with a stainless steel blade, which is this, what you're gonna get is you're not gonna get any rust, right? It's gonna hold an edge well, but not as well as the carbon, okay? Now, when it comes to sharpening, it's gonna be a lot easier for you to sharpen this blade because the metal isn't as tough, right? So again, you wanna think carbon, hard metal, holds an edge well, very strong, difficult to sharpen, right? You want to think about stainless is doesn't rust, doesn't hold an edge all that well, and it's easier to sharpen. But yeah, you just want to think about those two things. I would go carbon, but if you're in an area that's really wet and like maybe near the coast, you may want to consider stainless because the salt water, any type of moisture in the air, if you're living in a place like Washington State or something, you want to consider all those factors on your knife and what it's going to go through. So going back to a couple of knife types, right? You want to talk about we're going to talk about tips. So tips aren't really a big deal when it comes to knives, but some tips are definitely more desirable than others. I really like this design because when I'm doing bow drill and I place this down into a piece of wood and I begin spinning, it gives me a perfect circle divot to use when I'm doing my bow drill kit. Other types are like, clip points. They're kind of a strange, kind of like curve upward knife. I didn't bring an example of that actually. Then there's just like a straight kind of a cross blade like this one, okay? And then, like I said, this is called a drop point, kind of drops down, okay? And then there's Tanto blades. I don't have an example of a Tanto blade up here, but Tanto is kind of like that angled, straight across, all straight sides. There's no curvatures to them at all. If you just type in Tanto, T-A-N-T-O, that's another blade. I don't particularly like those knives a whole lot. They're real hard to sharpen right at that point where, the angles are. So I really just like the nice, even curved blades because when you sharpen it, it's much easier because it's just a much more fluid sharpen to me. So there's also a lot to be said about the kinds of grinds. Obviously, I doubt you all can see that, but there's different types of grinds to knives. What some people would, call blade geometry and things like that. There's ones that are kind of, they have this kind of hollow area right in here. They all have their different functionality. Some are a lot wider at the top, and those are going to be really good for splitting wood. Obviously the taper, right? If you look at axe head. So that's basically all that there is when it comes to blades out there for knives. Now, What's a good length? Everybody always asks me that. How big of a knife do you need? It really, again, goes back to what are you trying to accomplish outside? Are you trying to, build a whole entire house? You probably need a bunch of different tools for that. But if you're just trying to build a small fort, split some wood, do something like that, this knife would do all that hands down. No problem, right? And with this smaller one, I would definitely need additional tools. There would be no splitting of wood with this whatsoever. So again, think about what your needs are and then supplement with different tools if need be, okay? So a couple of handles, you can use bone, you can use antler, you can use cordage, you could use wood. There's so many different types of things. Particularly my favorite is what's called micarta. Micarta is basically canvas. I believe, I might be speaking out of line here, but I think what micarta is, M-I-C-A-R-T-A, micarta, it's canvas that's been basically laid on top of each other a few hundred times and then compressed with heat and kind of melted down, and it kind of comes out with this really neat looking textured material here. And I believe this is a micarta handle. There's some other micarta handles right here. A lot of my Essie knives, E-S-E-E, that's a great brand. I love it. And I don't get paid from any of these companies, so don't think that I'm making money here. I'm just giving you my actual opinion of what I've used over the years and years and years of doing bushcraft and survival skills. So LT Wrights, Mora, Essie knives, these are all great companies. So just looking at an anatomy of a survival knife, right? You could say this is a 4-inch, 1095, high carbon, full tang, ground drop point blade with a gray micarta handle and a black leather sheath, right? That would be the exact anatomy of this blade, okay? So we're gonna move along and hopefully continue on with care for knives. That's what we're going to talk about real quick next. So now, once your knife has arrived in the mail or you've picked it up at the store or whatever, let's talk real quick about care. So storing it properly is most important. You always want to, if you get one of these Mora, okay, these Mora fixed blades companions, there is a little button mechanism on this thing, okay, but you can't really see it, you can only hear it. So if I put it in halfway and then listen here, okay, hear that click? That's the little mechanism that allows this thing to stay securely in. Some knives, like leather sheaths, right? Watch this. This thing will slowly kind of just droop out of here because it's not a great, clip kind of lock mechanism inside here. It's just leather. So you want to make sure that your sheath is storing your knife securely and properly, okay? Next thing is just maintenance of the edge. Anything really what you're looking for along here is just any dings, nicks, cuts. Sometimes what happens is I was splitting wood one time and there was some type of metal that I guess long ago had been hit in there, and when I was just hitting it would not split. So I split the wood over and split it, and I noticed it just got to this point where it's still held together, and I was like, dang, there must be something in there. And then I looked at my knife real close, there was this huge chunk because I had been hitting that little piece of metal in the wood. So I had to use a file to just kind of scrape that out of there, and then I was able to take it on my sharpening stone. If you have a bunch of dings and nicks and cuts in this thing, do not take it to your sharpening stone. You're gonna put all kinds of little gouges in your sharpening stone, and then when you go to sharpen your knife when it is ready to be sharpened, you're gonna be chunking out your sharpening stone more than you are sharpening your knife. So knife care is an extensive process that you really, it's just like, gun care and anything else out there that you care for, musical instruments. It does take a little while to kind of fidget with things, learn about the tools, learn about the different types of materials that you can use to keep them clean or to potentially sharpen them and whatnot. So oiling, there's generally speaking, if you've got a carbon blade, you do want to every now and again just take a little bit of oil and just rub it down, and it doesn't really matter, a whole lot what kind of oil, just a little bit, and then just wipe it clean. If you get your carbon blade wet, dry it really, really well and then oil it. And also, if you have a leather sheath, you can use something called neat's foot oil, and it's N-E-A-T-S, neat's foot. Okay, neat's foot oil, and condition the leather with that. It's really good for it. And neat's foot oil is great for anything. I've got a few bow handles and it has like beaver tails and stuff like that on it, and those are all great to be conditioned by that neat's foot oil. So when you are oiling it, just be aware that, you know, obviously you've got a razor sharp instrument, and one time when I was doing that, I pushed, you know, across here and then slid down, and of course, you know, it slid right through my thumb. It's because I was just pressing real hard, you know, and I just shouldn't have been pressing that hard. When you're oiling it, just be real careful. You don't want to be cutting yourself while you're taking care of your knife. And that's about it as far as just taking care of it, storing it properly, making sure it's up and out of the way, not sliding around all over the place. Typically, you get all different kinds of ways to store your knife, such as belt loops. There's a couple different belt loops on this one. This one's worn around my neck with a lanyard. This one's, I got a neat little mechanism. If you really look at this thing, there's this little clip right here, okay? You see this button? This button, if you had two of these knives, will actually lock onto the front right here. So you could potentially have a knife for your carving and fine tuning skills, and then you could have another knife hanging off of this one that's more for like maybe processing animals or cleaning game, things like that. That's what I see a lot of people double up on these knives for in different reasons. So keep that in mind. One of the things I would definitely say is make sure your knife is comfortable in your hand, okay? You want a good, firm grip on your, I always tell my kids, I say, use your crab claw, okay? Shout out to Tony Dice for teaching me that. Use your crab claw. You want to use your thumbs, okay? This is where we're getting into tips and tricks, and we're jumping ahead of the gun. We haven't even started carving yet, but I'm giving you some tips and tricks now. Use your thumbs when you're carving, okay? If you think about the motion of a knife, a lot of people think it's like this, okay? It's this arm, shoulder, wrist motion. It's really not. It's really more about the thumbs and moving the stick more than the blade. And the only reason I say that is because just like any tool, if no one's touching the tool cannot hurt you, okay? A gun's just sitting there, it's not gonna go off. A knife just sitting there is not just gonna randomly cut you. You have to engage with it, okay? So making sure that you're engaging with it properly is the best bet. If this knife never moves, it's not gonna cut you. So hold it steady, pull the stick across it. That's the best way. We're gonna show you exactly what we're talking about in just a little bit. So a couple of other things, making sure you do not remove large chunks of wood. So if you think about this, when this slides, I'm just gonna hold my stick up here. When this slides across the wood like this, notice nothing's coming off. Now, if I tilt the knife up like this is too much wood coming off. So somewhere right in between, maybe at a 45 degrees, right? That's gonna be the maximum cut for a piece of wood. You don't wanna cut anything more than that because it's just gonna bite down into the wood and you're not gonna be able to remove it, okay? So think about the different degrees of cuts to your knife and your stick. You can use, depending on what kind of knife, some knives have the back of the knives is extremely sharp in a way that you could potentially hurt yourself. So anytime you're scraping something, just a couple tips and tricks, right? Instead of scraping with the blade, you could scrape with the back of your knife to remove anything. So a lot of twigs and branches and things like that come with, you know, little twigs that are sticking off of them to kind of get in your way. And if you don't want those in your way and you don't want to dull your knife while getting those out the way, you can literally just take the back of the knife and scrape it off like that. So let's talk about the knife safety for tonight. Okay, so the main thing is you want to have some kind of space to work around, and what we always like to teach people is take a stick. I just teach this to the kids, and I usually teach this to my adults too, but take a stick that's the size of your knife, okay? You want to kind of make a little space by stretching that stick out in all directions. So you've got what's called a blood bubble. So anybody who comes inside that area, they step in that area, they could get cut, right? Here's why, think about it. If you're not doing the thumb technique that I just showed you, and you're doing the wrist, elbow, shoulder technique, notice there's this point of control to uncontrol. Okay, control to uncontrol. So notice the edge of that knife, that's where the edge of that blood bubble is. So if you step inside the blood bubble, you run the risk of cutting somebody, or you run the risk of cutting well, you just run the risk of cutting someone. You obviously can still cut yourself in your own blood bubble. So keep that in mind first. Next is always carve away. Okay, always carve away. A lot of people can turn the knife blade back towards them. Like right now, this knife blade's going towards my pointer finger. You can carve like that, but it takes a lot of practice to get that good. So don't start out tonight just carving towards yourself. Always carve away and off yourself. And when I say that, I'm simply talking about if you're holding, like if you're down here and you're on your leg and your thigh and you're pushing off and you're going towards your leg, don't do any of that nonsense either. You want to make sure that when you're carving, you're not getting distracted. Okay, if you're trying to watch a TV show or something else while you're carving, don't do all that. I'm not kidding you. Everybody who cuts themselves, there's like a 99% chance it was because they were temporarily distracted from what they were doing, or they just were willfully being like, I can get away with this. I do that all the time. I work with knives every single day, and I'm always telling myself, I can get away with this, and then I poke myself, slice myself, or somehow damage myself. So just be mindful of yourself and who you are, and if you know you're that kind of risk taker with everything else in your life, be careful with knives because you can lose fingers with these things. I'm not kidding. Finally, when you're done, we just say end with everything away, right? So end with everything away, meaning basically secure your knife and put it up where you store your knife. Okay, so that's it. Those are going to be the rules that we simply go by. So most importantly is carve away from yourself, carve off yourself. Okay, don't be carving on your leg and don't be carving towards yourself. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to turn the camera down now, and we are going to begin carving. Okay, we're going to start with some very basic cuts, some very simple stuff. Okay, and how we're going to do that is you're just going to kind of look at my hands. Now, just to keep everything 100% safe here, I'm going to wear a pair of gloves while I carve. Just keep everything safe. I don't want to like accidentally cut myself on a live stream and blood start going everywhere. I think that'd be super weird. Maybe it'll go viral then, right? This dude cuts himself with a knife on the live thing. So we're going to turn the video down. You're still going to hear me talking. I tried to figure out some kind of way of like you seeing my face and then it's splitting the screen and showing my hands, but I couldn't get it all figured out. If anybody out there is really, really good with live streams type stuff, I've got 2 cameras and 2 tripods and everything that required to do that, but I don't know if you can do all split screen stuff like that. So anybody out there want to help us out at Lumber Society, feel free to send us an email. Okay, I'm going to turn the screen down and we're going to get started. Okay. If I can turn this, there we go. That, I think, is what we are after. Okay, right there. Okay, so I think this should be able to work. Yes, definitely keep first aid near, okay? And by the way, if you have any questions while I'm setting all this up, go ahead and ask them now. Now's your chance to ask any questions. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. There we go. All right, I'll try to get this just right. So I cannot really see the screen per se. I can kind of see a little bit, but it's tilted towards me, so I'm going to hopefully do my best here. So this stick is a piece of privet. It's long, it's strong, it's extremely dense, heavy hardwood. When you carve with heavy hardwood like this, it is going to dull your knife, obviously, okay? There's a couple of things to keep in mind, and one of those things is that greener wood is considered softer wood. So if you're gonna carve something to practice on, why not just practice on green wood? It is gonna prevent your knife from getting dull as quickly. So I'm just gonna carve with this piece, and we're gonna start out. I'm actually going to use this brand new Mora knife, okay? And let's talk about control, okay? So good grip on the knife, okay? You can get it like this, and what I always do is put my thumb right on the back of that blade, just like that. Now we're going to get the stick and this is in my right hand. The stick's going to be in my left hand now, and I'm going to put the blade just gently about 1/4 to 1/2 inch back from the edge, okay? let me see if I can center that. Now, I'm gonna scoop my hand up, choke up to the point where I get both thumbs on the blade, and now I'm just gonna simply tape the very first swipe just like that, okay? Now, as you carve this, notice, once again, if you really pay attention, this knife will never move. Look what's moving. The stick is the only thing that is moving here. And it's because I'm pressing and resisting against the knife while pulling back with the stick. So once again, if the knife never moves, the knife's never gonna hurt you. If you begin doing this motion, this is where the injuries begin taking place, okay? Or this motion, obviously, too. So, we're just gonna go through here, and the very first thing we are going to do is we're just going to do just a couple of types of cut where we shave the bark off the stick. And I want you guys to try and shave a thin strip off your bark, okay? Now, I don't know if you know this, but there is a contest. I think it's in Japan. I'm pretty sure it's in Japan. It's a wood carving contest. And the contest is to see who can shave the thinnest piece of wood. And I think the person who holds the world's record is like 1/16 of an inch or something like that, or 1/16 the thickness of a human hair. I think it's something like that. It's so obscure and odd that you'd be like, what? But anyway, look that up. It's the thinnest wood shaving contest. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're just seeing how thin we can make some of these pieces. Now, here is where, when I was talking about earlier, the blade, hopefully y'all can see that, here is where the angle comes in, right? So again, taking a look at this, this is carving nothing because the blade's completely perpendicular to the stick and flat. Now, if I gently begin tilting this, you can start to see it's starting to shave off some little bit of the bark there. So the more you tilt this angle, the harder it becomes to carve. If you do not tilt this, if you tilt this too far forward, your blade is gonna get stuck in there, and you're just gonna keep pushing and pushing, and eventually you're gonna start doing this shaking thing, right? Stop right there. Stop, back the knife out, switch the angle, and come back and attempt to do it from a different direction to get that piece off there. Don't just try to force through wood like that. That's where a lot of people get injured, okay? So we're gonna go back to this tip over here, and we're just gonna continue to shave off some of our little shavings here, okay? And now the first thing that a lot of people ask is like, okay, what if I'm out there in survival, what am I doing, right? Well, first thing I would do is pick up a stick. The reason I'm picking up a stick is because the stick is the ultimate weapon for the primitive hunter-gatherer, right? I guess you could argue with me about rocks being there too. But let's say you're going out and you're in survival and you're looking for water and you're looking for shelter and you're looking for food, and little bunny foo-foo hops in front of you and you have no stick in your hand. What you just did was you lost an opportunity for food, okay? So a stick is a really opportune weapon. Okay, as soon as you see an opportunity to use your stick, your throwing stick, you use it. Okay, little rabbit, birds, whatever it may be, should throw it at there. And before you go out there and just start willy-nilly throwing at things, practice in your backyard with a throwing stick. Get a few throwing sticks, carve them down, shape them out. There's 1,000 different ways to make a throwing stick. Think about boomerangs and things like that. That's a great example, the most most well-known example from Australia, obviously. But they've found throwing sticks in King Tut's tombs. They've found throwing sticks all over the world. So it's, again, the most ancient of the tools. When you get that throwing stick, there's a couple things you can do, which I'm going to show you right now. So this is what's called a wedge, okay? And the reason you want to carve a wedge on your throwing stick is because it turns it into a really good digging tool for roots, for digging for water, digging to put support beams in, whatever it is that you're trying to dig. A digging stick is a great tool to have in survival. So here, let's talk about how to make a wedge. Making a wedge is simply a dovetail shape, so like this, okay? So here we go. I'm gonna just simply take this flat part and cut straight to the center of the stick. So what I mean by that is if you look at the stick, okay, here, I'm cutting to that center, that little white dot. And then I'm gonna flip it over and do the exact same thing, and you're gonna see a little wedge come out of here, okay? All right, now I'm gonna flip the stick over, do the exact same thing on the other side. So I want all of you to be carving a wedge right now. Carve a wedge for me. And again, a wedge is should look something like this starting out, and by the end it should be pointy. It's not a spear. A wedge is different from a spear. A spear is cut all the way around 360 degrees. A wedge is just cut on two sides. Think of a vertice or a rooftop. Two flat planes coming together at an apex. That is going to be our wedge, okay? And I've never done a knife carving live stream before, so y'all comment and tell me how I'm doing, and just, you know, drop a little, hey, we miss you or something out there, because I miss all of y'all. This is not as cool as being in front of a really awesome group of audience and cracking jokes and getting y'all's feedback and y'all asking questions and all that cool stuff. So I miss y'all out there. I hope y'all are doing okay. Okay, flipping this stick over. Look, we're coming along pretty nicely there. You can see my wedge is getting there. Okay, so we're still carving. All right. Now, you can see it's almost done. We're gonna clean up that one side right there just a little bit more. There we go. Now, what you can do is you can check in with an email, or you can drop by Buzzmill and you can show off your beautiful stick, and we can get you your patch. Hopefully we'll have some patches made for everybody. Okay? All right, so there is our wedge. All right, real effective at digging. All right, so obviously prying, anything of the sort. It's really good at that stuff. Okay, so once again, go slow, be methodical. I don't know that, you know, let me just tell you this. I'm gonna sum it up by saying this. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. What I'm trying to say is don't rush anything. If this is your first time carving with a knife, go slow. I teach kids who've never carved in their life how to use knives all the time, and that's my #1 advice no matter what, is just go slow. The slower you go, the less likely you are to hurt yourself. Now, we've got a wedge here, and now we're gonna turn this into a spear point. So remember, I talked about a wedge being two flat sides that come together. Now, a spear point is gonna go all the way around, very similar to this right here, okay? So how do we do that? Well, we're gonna take our wedge and we're gonna turn it into, well, let's flip the stick over actually. Let's do it on this end, okay? So how we make a spear point is simply starting at the very tip and just taking a little bite off the edge, just a little bite off the edge, 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 and just go around each time with a little bite off the edge, spinning the stick, okay, the whole time. Now, once you get there, you're gonna back your blade up a little bit. Notice I was about, you know, 1/4 of an inch, a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch there. Now I'm gonna back my blade up and go off there and keep spinning the stick while taking it off, okay? Just like that. And you can slowly start to see this spear shape taking place. Now, I'm gonna go back to my original spot and clean that up. Okay. There we go. And that's how you do it. I'm going to, there's a comment here and I can't click it because I have my gloves on, so let me look here. Oh, let me see, what does this say? Okay, it says, first timer here, thanks for doing this. I probably wouldn't have signed up to go in person. And thanks for being virtual. Awesome, thanks Bobby. Megan Mars says, so awesome, Chris. Love this action. Thank you so much. And again, all of you out there watching and all of you who are watching this after the live stream, thanks so much for supporting Buzzmill and thanks so much for supporting Lumber Society. We're going to keep going here on our spear tip. So once again, the most important thing for a spear tip is that you're just removing little bits at a time while simultaneously spinning the stick. Now, a lot of things happen when doing this, and the way to mitigate that is to stop every few slices and actually look down, okay, look down, right, your spear. And the reason why you want to look down your spear is to make sure that little white button is right in the middle. If the white button's over to the side, that means that you've carved the stick off over to the side, you know, at kind of at an angle. So look at these little key features as you carve to see if you've got your spear point done just right. So the reason we also teach you to carve wedges is because there's a lot of situations where you can make and engineer primitively different tools and mechanisms and levers and things like that that require a dovetail cut or a wedge cut like this. Same thing with the spear. There's a bunch of other different types too, but we're not going to cover every single type of cut tonight. There's something called the tri-stick, and I highly recommend you all look online and look for something called a tri-stick. Type in carving tri-stick. You're going to see probably 12 different cuts all the way down a stick, okay? And if you I actually have a multitude of different examples of a tri-stick. I don't have one right here with me, so I'm not going to jump up and run away and go get one, but I should have brought one. Maybe I should jump up and go grab one real quick. But you're going to see a lot of different cuts all across here. In fact, I'm going to run, and I'm going to go grab one real quick, because I do want to point out some things. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. This is a tri-stick, okay? This is a tri-stick. A tri-stick is exactly that. You try to make all these different cuts, okay? So if you look here, here's our spear point, okay? You look on the other end, here's our wedge, okay? If you look down at this opposite end again, this is called a saddle cut. And if you notice, it looks just kind of like a little moon or like a little bowl, a little crescent cut out of there. The next cut, this is what I call a stopper notch. And what it is it's a 90-degree latch, if you will. And a really cool little trick is that the wedge actually goes into the stopper notch, and that's one of the ways to make different trap parts, snare parts, and other primitive engineering parts, obviously leverage and fulcrums, right? This is what's called the reduction. So obviously the stick started out this thick, but now it's this thick in this little area, but it's perfectly reduced. It's still exactly like the stick is. It's just been reduced, okay? This next one is 4 squared edges. Now, the reason we have 4 squared edges is this latch right here can actually click on and hold itself up. So for instance, if you were hanging a kettle over the fire, you could use a latch and a 4-way here, hook those up together, kind of basically it would sit right like this and latch. So like let's say the 4-way was right here, this would sit and latch on there like that and hang, hold a pot, okay? The next one here, this is, I just called this a V-cut. A V-cut's really good. A lot of you who've done bow drill with me know what these V-cuts are for. This is the notch that you typically would get your coal out of right here. And again, this thing also works really, really well as a pivoting point for traps and snares and deadfalls, okay? This is what is called a beaver chew. A beaver chew is a really cool technique for getting a stick in half if you do not have a saw readily available. So I do want to show you real quick how to do a beaver chew. So we're going to do that together. I'm going to take the end of this stick. So you always want to make sure you do a beaver chew not towards the end, but somewhere kind of like a few inches up, maybe 3 to 4 inches off the end. Here's why. If you were to start your beaver chew up here, when you go to flip the stick over, you have nothing to grab onto. Okay, so you're going to be carving in two different directions. You're going to be carving in one direction and in another direction. So here we go with the beaver chew. Beaver chew is simply a cut in and then a twist, a cut in and a twist, a cut in and a twist, cut in and twist. And what I'm doing is, I guess the twist means just a little bit of a turn of the stick, okay? Just a little bit of the turn of the stick, all right? So we're gonna cut in, we're gonna cut in, we're gonna cut in, we're gonna cut in. Now look at the perforation all the way around the stick. This is the beginning of our beaver chew. Now we're gonna cut this opposite direction. So the first cut came this way, next cut's gonna come this way. So again, turn the stick, okay? And same thing. Notice here, look, I don't have a lot to grab onto, so I'm gonna have to do this kind of meticulously and a little bit of a struggle for me, but I think I can pull it off. So now, look at all that wood coming out. Okay? And this is the beaver chew. It was really funny today. I had a little girl at my summer camp, and she was like, "Can I use the saw?" And I was like, "What are you gonna saw?" And she held up the thinnest little twig I've ever seen. And I was like, "Why don't you just use your knife to cut that in half?" And she's like, "How?" And I was like, "Beaver chew it." She's like, "Oh yeah." And it was really cool because we had done knife carving on Tuesday, so she was pretty proficient. So now you can kind of see why they call it a beaver chew. If you go online, go to Google, type in black cottonwood beaver, you will see some of the craziest images of what these beavers are capable of doing to trees. These trees in Washington, these black cottonwoods, they're just abnormally huge, and they look exactly like this, and they're about to just basically, you know, fall over. But this is our beaver chew. So now, again, here's our pre-cut one. Here's the one we just did. Okay. Now we're gonna go in a little bit deeper again. Okay. And what that means is we're just simply gonna keep doing exactly what we did before. And just carving in all the way around. Okay. And before you know it, that point at the center gets so weak, okay, that the stick can just break. Okay. And I don't want to scratch the table too badly here, so I'm going to put this little piece underneath here. But then you just simply press, and there's the piece is gone. Okay? So anywhere you want to cut a stick, you can cut it. You just got to beaver chew it in that area, and that's a beaver chew. Okay? So moving along on our tri-stick here, we have this last little kind of hook notch here, and same thing, pot holder. If you were to turn this upside down and you had a little, you know, hanging, handle, you could hang that on there as a latch and hook something on there. It doesn't quite have quite a pronounced hook to it on the camera. I'm looking at it, but in person, it does have. There you go. Now you can kind of see that pronounced hook on there. Okay, and finally, this is just something that's used for holding things up. Drilling is what this last one would be. Drilling is simply making an area completely flat, placing your knife down, and then simply spinning back and forth in a wide variety of directions, going 360 degrees all the way around. Then what you would do is flip the knife or the stick over and go in from the opposite direction, and the 2 points would eventually meet. Sorry about that. I think I just had a phone call from it just clicked on here. So that's about it for carving. When you begin this process, let me just say this. Go slow. Again, okay? Start out, go to the woods, find a branch that's really sturdy, okay? Give it a good, good bend in the middle. If that thing snaps instantly, thank goodness, because sometimes what happens when you're carving is the weak branch just kind of breaks on you and either gets your finger, it could potentially get your thumb, you could poke yourself. Lots of different things can potentially happen when carving. So just my number one advice is start slow. Go real slow, have a lot of fun, and enjoy this skill, because there's something very primal about removing wood with a tool. And if you're ever down at a creek and there's lots and lots of rocks, I challenge a couple of you to break a few of those rocks. Those of you who came to our primitive tool class know how difficult that class was, but continue to practice breaking stones in order to get good blades, and then take those blades and use them in conjunction with your knives. So one of the things, I'll give you an example that I'll do, is I'll bring my knife with me on my camping trips, but then sometimes I'll put my knife away, and if I'm having to make a fire, I'll just use a stone blade. What this is doing is this is teaching you in a controlled environment how to not have your tools, but to still make things work for you. Right? So in real situations, in real survival, if you found yourself without this knife and you're like, dang, I got to use this rock, what? You'd be really, kind of hard pressed to do so. But since you're practicing in a controlled environment, it's going to make that moment where you actually need to use that rock that much easier. That's if you understand what I'm saying here. So, if y'all have any questions, now is your chance to ask, and we're not going to go too much further on this. I think our next live stream, I think I might do from the Lumber Society. We're going to, let me take these gloves off real quick and reposition all this camera. Okay. All right, let's redo this. There we go. Hello, everybody. It's good to see all your faces again. Or my face again. Yeah, so we are, hopefully you all have watched the Firesider video. If you've watched it, it's been about a week now. Your Firesider should be brewing for about a week. In about 3 to 4 weeks, crack the top off. And I didn't talk about the honey in the video, and that's why I'm talking about it right here real quick. Add honey, give it a sip, add honey, give it a sip. Once it's the desired sweetness and you've added enough honey, it's done. And you've got a big old jar of Firesider ready for your body. So just wanted to throw that out there for those of you who didn't pick up on that. Now, we are coming to a close, and I don't see any questions coming up, so I think we're gonna go ahead and end this. If you are brand new to Lumber Society, welcome. We are Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts with beer, and we hope to see you live and in person soon at the Buzz Mill. Thank you so much for all of your time. Thanks so much for your support. If you want to donate anything, you can donate via Venmo at Natureversity, and that's spelt exactly the way it sounds. I don't have anything to write on or an at Natureversity here in front of me. Sorry about that. NATUREVERSITY at Natureversity. You can donate to me. Thanks so much. Y'all have a wonderful Thursday night, and be safe. Be safe, really. If anything you carve, post a photo of, and then tag us at Lumber Society or at Natureversity or anything like that. Just let us know that you're doing these skills. Let us know you're enjoying these things. The more feedback we get from the community, the more we're going to continue to do these. But if we're not getting any feedback and it's just kind of, lackluster results, we're going to try and put our energy and our efforts into other things. So hopefully all of you who enjoyed watching this, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, something, help share this video, promote it, let your friends know that Lumber Society exists and what we're doing. We have a lot of people, when I tell them, they're like, I didn't never know that was a thing. And so just tell more people about what we are and what we're doing. Y'all have a great night. Thanks so much for watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you in 2 Thursdays. We are going to be doing... Oh goodness, I don't even know what we're doing. I'm terrible at promoting myself here. I don't know. Stay up to date. I'm sorry, everybody. I don't even know what's coming up next. Okay. Y'all take care. Have a great night. Bye.